The Celestial Veil. Episode 1. The Blank Chronicle. Adult Narrative Edition. Chapter 1. The City Above the Storm. Morning arrived above the clouds long before it reached the world below. The first rays of sunlight slipped between drifting islands of stone, turning waterfalls into rivers of liquid gold as they plunged through open sky toward lands no citizen of Cloudspire could see. Temple bells echoed gently across the floating kingdom, answered by the distant calls of dragons already beginning another day beneath heaven. For many, Cloudspire was the greatest city ever built. To Longway, Cloudspire was not a marvel to be admired from afar. It was simply home. And this morning, home had overslept. The fourth morning bell rang. Longway's eyes opened. He stared at the ceiling. No. He sat upright so quickly that 3 books slid from the bed. A stack of scrolls toppled onto the floor, and a half-finished cup of tea narrowly escaped disaster. His apartment looked less like the home of a respected scholar and more like the aftermath of an argument between a library and a storm. Books occupied every available surface. Maps covered the walls. Ancient scrolls leaned against furniture that had long ago surrendered its original purpose. Somewhere beneath the clutter, a kettle began whistling loudly enough to sound offended. Longway sighed. "I hear you." The kettle continued protesting. "I said I hear you." It remained unconvinced. He found one boot immediately. The other appeared to have disappeared into history. After a brief search involving several books, an overturned chair, and a map of forgotten trade routes, he finally discovered it beneath yesterday's research notes. Exactly where I left it. He frowned. I think. At 24, Longway possessed an extraordinary memory for ancient civilizations, forgotten languages, and imperial records spanning thousands of years. Unfortunately, he rarely remembered where he placed his own belongings. He hurried toward the door, then stopped. The glove. His smile faded. Carefully, he removed the glove covering his left hand. Embedded within his wrist rested a single silver chronicle scale, small, perfectly formed, and perfectly silent. Every dragon born beneath heaven carried a chronicle scale. Through it flowed the memories of generations that had come before. Some relived legendary battles. Others heard the voices of ancestors guiding them through moments of uncertainty. Longway had never experienced any of it. His scale had remained blank since birth. Physicians called it impossible. Priests called it an omen. Other children had called him far less kind things. Over the years, Longway had stopped caring what people called it. It was simply part of who he was. He slipped the glove back into place. The 5th bell echoed across Cloudspire. His heart sank. The right. Without another word, he grabbed his satchel and rushed outside. The city had fully awakened. Scholars crossed elegant jade bridges carrying armfuls of scrolls. Merchants opened floating market stalls suspended above gardens blooming with flowers found nowhere else beneath heaven. Young dragons practiced graceful aerial forms high above temple rooftops, their wings catching the morning light like sheets of polished crystal. Longway barely noticed any of it. He was running far too late. He crossed the final bridge at full speed. Just ahead stood the Hall of 10,000 Chronicles, the oldest building in Cloudspire, the place where the memory of the world itself was preserved. Its white stone towers disappeared into the clouds above, while thousands of bronze bells hung silently beneath sweeping roofs carved with dragons whose names no living soul remembered speaking. Longway slowed. Every visit reminded him why he had chosen the life of a scholar. Knowledge lived here. History breathed here. If there was any place beneath heaven that could explain why his chronicle scale remained silent, it would be this hall. He climbed the final steps. Master Jian was already waiting. The elderly historian folded his hands inside wide sleeves and regarded his student with patient disappointment. "You are late." Longway bowed respectfully. "Only by 1 bell. 1 bell becomes 2. It hasn't yet." Master Jian raised an eyebrow. "You continue confusing optimism with punctuality." Long Wei smiled despite himself. It helps me sleep. It also causes you to oversleep. For a brief moment, the old master's stern expression softened. Then he gestured toward the enormous bronze doors. The rite has begun. Long Wei nodded. His smile disappeared. Every year he told himself that perhaps this time his chronicle scale would awaken, and every year it remained silent. Robes. He drew a slow breath, straightened his robes, and stepped into the hall where his future and the future of heaven itself were waiting. Chapter 3. The Emperor's Summons. No one left the hall. No one dared. The vision had lasted only moments, yet it had unsettled 15 centuries of certainty. Grand Archivist Jin Luo remained standing before the Mirror of Origins, his gaze fixed upon water that had already returned to perfect stillness. He searched his own memory. Nothing answered. That frightened him more than the vision itself. Seal the hall. His voice was calm. Too calm. Ancient runes awakened across the bronze doors. Blue light spread through carved dragons until every entrance disappeared behind shimmering barriers. The apprentices exchanged uneasy glances. One finally found the courage to ask, "Grand Archivist, what did we see?" Jin Luo answered without turning. "I do not know." The words struck the chamber harder than thunder. The Keeper of Memory did not know. Long Wei quietly replaced his glove. He could still feel warmth lingering beneath the silver chronicle scale. Not heat. Recognition. As though something had looked back at him through the mirror. Master Jian stepped beside him. "You all right?" Long Wei nodded slowly. "I don't think that vision belonged to me." Master Jian studied him. "I think it chose you." 3 deliberate knocks echoed through the sealed hall. No one should have been able to enter. Yet the barriers dissolved on their own. An imperial messenger stepped inside. His silver armor bore the azure dragon crest of the emperor himself. He bowed deeply before Jin Luo. "Your Excellency, His Imperial Majesty requests your presence immediately." The messenger hesitated. "He also requests." His eyes settled on Long Wei. The scholar Long Wei. Silence spread through the chamber once again. Several apprentices looked toward Long Wei with open disbelief. Long Wei blinked. "I'm fairly certain that's a mistake." The messenger unfolded a jade scroll. The emperor was quite specific. He read aloud. "Bring me the one whose chronicle remembers what heaven has forgotten." Long Wei swallowed. That definitely sounds like someone else. Even Master Jian couldn't suppress the faintest smile. The journey to the imperial palace carried them across the highest bridges in Cloudspire. Normally, Long Wei would have admired the floating gardens, the crystal canals winding through white stone streets, and the dragons gliding gracefully between towers. Today, something felt wrong. A lantern hanging outside a tea house suddenly dimmed. Its golden flame vanished. No one seemed to notice. Farther ahead, an elderly scholar paused outside a memorial garden. He stared at a carved stone bearing dozens of names. His eyes filled with tears. "I know I loved someone here," he whispered, "but I can't remember who." Long Wei slowed. The forgetting had escaped the hall. The Sky Palace rose above every other structure in Cloudspire. Built from white jade and crystal, it appeared less constructed than grown from the mountain of cloud beneath it. Stone dragons watched from towering columns. Water flowed upward through marble channels, disappearing into the sky before falling again as silver rain. Above the great entrance, ancient characters had been carved into polished obsidian. "Truth preserves heaven." Long Wei read the inscription twice. For reasons he could not explain, it no longer felt like certainty. It felt like a plea. The palace doors opened. Imperial guards stepped aside without a word. The messenger bowed once more. "His Majesty is waiting." Long Wei drew a slow breath. Only hours earlier he had expected another disappointing rite of remembering. Instead, the Emperor of Heaven's greatest kingdom had summoned the one dragon whose chronicle scale had never remembered anything at all. Behind him, Cloudspire continued its ordinary morning. Ahead, everything was about to change. Chapter 4. The Emperor Who Remembered Too Much. The throne room surprised Longwei. He had expected grandeur. Instead, he found silence. The chamber stretched high into the clouds, its polished floor reflecting the morning sky through open arches. No banners celebrated victories. No statues glorified past rulers. Only a single throne carved from living blue crystal stood beneath the vaulted ceiling. It seemed less like a seat of power, and more like a promise. Emperor Aotian stood beside it, not upon it. He watched the clouds drifting beyond the palace walls with the stillness of someone listening to a conversation no one else could hear. Without turning, he spoke. "You are Longwei." The young scholar bowed deeply. "Yes, your majesty." The emperor finally faced him. His silver-blue robes carried no unnecessary ornament. His presence alone commanded respect. His eyes lingered on Longwei longer than courtesy required. "You resemble your mother." Longwei's breath caught. Almost no one spoke of his parents. "They disappeared when I was 6. So I was told." Aotian's voice held an unexpected sadness. But stories told to children are not always complete. The emperor motioned toward a low table overlooking the endless clouds. "Sit." Tea had already been prepared. Longwei hesitated only a moment before obeying. Aotian poured 2 cups, not as an emperor serving a subject, but as one scholar welcoming another. "I've read your research." Longwei blinked. "My research? The forgotten trade routes, the vanished dialects, the kingdoms that disappeared from our maps." A faint smile crossed the emperor's face. "You have spent your life searching for things everyone else stopped looking for." Longwei lowered his eyes. "I suppose I've always believed that if something disappears, it deserves to be found." The emperor studied him carefully. "That answer is precisely why you're here." For several moments, neither spoke. The silence was comfortable, measured, almost deliberate. Finally, Aotian rose and crossed to an ancient cedar chest resting beside the throne. Its bronze lock bore the seal of the first emperor. He placed both hands upon it. "I have guarded this for 783 years." The lid opened slowly. Inside rested a single bamboo scroll wrapped in faded blue silk. The cloth had nearly turned gray with age. The emperor handled it with extraordinary care. "My predecessor left instructions." He looked directly at Longwei. They were not to be opened until a dragon with a silent chronicle scale stood before the throne. Longwei stared. "That can't be referring to me." Aotian gently untied the silk. "I believe it has always referred to you." The old bamboo creaked as it unfurled. Time had faded much of the ink. Even so, the first lines remained clear. "If these words are being read, the impossible has returned." The emperor continued. "Do not fear the child whose chronicle remembers nothing. Fear the memory that has been taken from the world." Longwei leaned closer. His heartbeat quickened. "What does it mean?" Aotian slowly turned the scroll. Half the writing had vanished. Not damaged. Not faded. Gone. Only blank bamboo remained where sentences should have continued. The emperor touched the empty space. "When I inherited this scroll, 12 more lines existed." His voice became almost a whisper. "Now, there are only 6. Longwei stared at the missing words. "They're still disappearing. They have been. For centuries." Without warning, fresh ink spread across the ancient bamboo. Neither man touched it. Letters formed one by one before their eyes. When the first chronicle awakens, the writing stopped. The remaining sentence never appeared. Longwei looked up. "The first chronicle?" The emperor's expression hardened. "I was hoping you would tell me." Before either could speak again, warning bells erupted across Cloudspire. Not 1, not 2, every bell in the kingdom. Their deep voices rolled across the floating city like distant thunder. An imperial guard burst through the doors. He dropped to one knee. "Your Majesty." The eastern sky gate. He struggled to catch his breath. Has opened. Aotian closed the ancient scroll. His face had gone pale. It has begun. Long Wei rose instinctively. What has? The Emperor looked toward the eastern horizon. The part of history that was never supposed to return. Chapter 5. The Gate That Should Never Open. The Eastern Sky Gate had not opened in 3,000 years. Most dragons believed it was nothing more than an ancient monument, a reminder of an age no one fully understood. Few living souls knew it had once been a road. Long Wei followed Emperor Ao Tian through the palace as warning bells echoed across Cloud Spire. Guards hurried through marble corridors. Messengers raced from tower to tower. The calm rhythm of the floating kingdom had dissolved into disciplined urgency. No one shouted. No one panicked. But everyone understood. Something impossible had happened. The Sky Gate stood at the eastern edge of Cloud Spire where the floating city met open sky. Two towering pillars of white jade rose from the clouds like the remains of a forgotten temple. Between them, nothing. No doors. No walls. Only empty air. Yet every dragon standing there watched that emptiness, as if expecting someone to step through it. Nearly 200 Imperial Guardians had formed a defensive line. At their center stood General Byron, commander of the White Tiger Guardians. His white armor reflected the morning sun. Across his back rested a long spear forged from moon steel. Unlike the anxious soldiers surrounding him, Byron stood perfectly still. The Emperor approached. What have we lost? Byron answered immediately. Nothing, Your Majesty. And what have we found? The general's eyes never left the gate. I cannot yet answer. The air changed. The clouds between the pillars began turning inward. Mist gathered where nothing had existed moments before. Light folded upon itself until the empty sky resembled the surface of still water. Then, footsteps. Slow. Measured. Unhurried. Existed. A figure emerged. Not a warrior. Not a king. Existed. An old man. His gray robes had been patched countless times. Dust-covered worn sandals. A simple wooden staff rested comfortably in one weathered hand. He looked less like a legend, and more like a traveler who had spent too many years walking. He stopped, looked across Cloud Spire, smiled. The mountains, he whispered. They're still beautiful. General Byron stepped forward. State your name. The old man frowned thoughtfully. I had one. Thoughtfully. A long silence followed. I simply can't remember it. Several guards tightened their grip on their weapons. Byron's voice remained calm. Every soul carries a name. I agree. The traveler replied. I only seem to have misplaced mine. Emperor Ao Tian studied the stranger. You crossed the Eastern Sky Gate. I did. No one has crossed that gate for 3,000 years. The old man nodded gently. It was a longer walk than I expected. Long Wei couldn't help smiling. Even now, the stranger carried an easy warmth that felt strangely familiar. The Emperor asked quietly, Who are you? The traveler rested both hands upon his staff. I was a gardener. A gardener. Long Wei repeated. The old man smiled. I cared for a very large tree. The word struck something deep inside Long Wei. His chronicle scale grew warm beneath the glove. One of the imperial scholars stepped forward carrying the mirror of true reflection. If he speaks truth, the scholar announced, the mirror will reveal it. The polished surface reflected everything before it. The soldiers, the emperor, the floating mountains, the endless sky. Only one figure was missing. The old gardener. The reflection simply passed through him. The assembled guards murmured uneasily. Even Byron took one cautious step backward. The traveler looked into the mirror himself. Well, he said with mild surprise. That explains why birds keep flying through me. Several soldiers exchanged confused glances. Long Wei almost laughed. The old man noticed. You still laugh first. Long Wei blinked. I'm sorry. The gardener looked directly into his eyes. Recognition filled his gentle smile. There you are. Long Wei frowned. Have we met? Not in the life you remember. The answer hung quietly between them. The old man took one slow step closer. I carried you on my shoulders. Beneath the world tree. The chronicle scale beneath Longway's glove burst into golden light. Across the kingdoms, far beyond Cloudspire, 9 ancient bells began ringing. Not in warning, in awakening. And somewhere beneath roots older than heaven itself, a woman opened her eyes. Chapter 6, when the 9 bells sang. The bells had not rung in 3,000 years. Not once. Not for emperors. Not for wars. Not even for the fall across the eastern forests. All 9 now sang together. Their voices drifted through bamboo groves wrapped in silver mist, across moonlit streams and forgotten shrines, until every creature within the moonshadow bamboo sea stopped to listen. Even the wind refused to interrupt them. At the heart of the forest stood Moonshadow Court. Unlike Cloudspire, it possessed no towering walls. The forest itself was its guardian. Paths shifted with every sunrise. Bridges appeared only for welcome guests. Those who entered uninvited often wandered for days, only to find themselves standing exactly where they had begun. Nothing entered Moonshadow Court unnoticed. Nothing left without permission. Queen Yulian stood upon a balcony overlooking the Bell Pavilion. Her silver robes moved gently in the morning breeze. Behind her, 9 ethereal tails shimmered for only an instant before disappearing from mortal sight. She had ruled the Fox Kingdom longer than most kingdoms had existed. Yet the sound now echoing through the forest was older even than she was. She closed her eyes. They're calling. An elderly fox spirit stepped beside her. Elder Sora bowed deeply. The 9 bells have awakened. I can hear that. Yu Lian answered quietly. What I cannot hear is why. The final bell faded. Silence settled across the forest. Not empty silence. Expectant silence. The kind that arrives moments before history changes. A young messenger hurried into the pavilion. Your Majesty. The Vault of Echoes. Yu Lian's expression hardened. What about it? The names. His voice trembled. They're disappearing. Deep beneath Moonshadow Court rested the Vault of Echoes. Crystal tablets stretched through vast underground chambers, each preserving the true names entrusted to the Fox Kingdom since the beginning of recorded history. Names carried power. To forget a true name was to risk forgetting the life connected to it. Yu Lian descended alone. The air grew colder with every step. Golden lanterns illuminated endless rows of crystal. Normally each tablet glowed softly with remembered lives. Today, dozens had grown dim. She reached the first. A treaty she herself had witnessed centuries earlier. Half the signatures had vanished. Not scratched away. Not broken. Simply gone. Her fingertips brushed the crystal. A vision flashed. Children laughing beneath an immense golden tree. A young dragon racing a fox spirit through fields of sunlight. Phoenix feathers drifting like snow. White tiger cubs chasing falling leaves. The memory lasted only a heartbeat. Then it disappeared. Yu Lian staggered backward. Tears filled her eyes before she understood why. I know them. She whispered. I know that I know them. But their names had already slipped beyond reach. Above the vault, the bells rang once more. Only once. Yu Lian looked toward the eastern horizon. Somewhere beyond the mountains. Someone had remembered what the world had forgotten. She didn't know who. She didn't know how. But hope, for the first time in centuries, felt real. She turned toward Elder Sora. Prepare the court. The old stories are waking. Far away, Longway stood beside the nameless gardener as his chronicle scale continued glowing beneath the morning sky. Neither of them noticed the single golden leaf drifting silently from nowhere. It landed at Longway's feet. Before he could pick it up, it dissolved into light. Somewhere deep beneath the roots of the world, the library stirred. For the first time in 3,000 years. It had begun waiting. Chapter 7. The Phoenix Who Remembered Fire. Far beyond Cloudspire, where the eastern sky welcomed the first light of every dawn, stood the kingdom of eternal dawn. It was said that the sun lingered there a little longer than anywhere else beneath heaven. Golden forests covered its hills. Rivers shimmered like molten amber. The air carried the scent of cedar, wild blossoms, and wood smoke from temples that had burned sacred incense for thousands of years. It was the homeland of the Phoenix, a people who understood that every ending carried the promise of another beginning. Phoenixes did not fear death. Death was familiar. Rebirth was certain. What they feared was forgetting. Every time a phoenix returned from sacred fire, a small piece of memory was left behind. A childhood laugh, a familiar face, the sound of a mother's voice, a promise whispered beneath autumn leaves. One life ended. Another began. Memory became the bridge between them. Without it, rebirth lost its meaning. Princess Feng Lian stood alone within the garden of ash blossoms. Hundreds of flowering trees surrounded a circular pool, so still it reflected the sky with perfect clarity. She knelt beside the water, carefully turning the pages of a weathered journal. Its leather cover had been repaired countless times. Inside, every page had been written by her. Or rather, by every version of herself that had lived before. Each rebirth had added another chapter, another lifetime, another attempt to leave something behind for the woman she would one day become. She smiled softly as she read. If you're reading this, you probably still hate bitter tea. Feng Lian laughed. I still do. She continued. Don't trust anyone who says forgetting makes life easier. The smile slowly disappeared. The words beneath them began fading. Ink dissolved into blank parchment. One sentence, then another. She blinked. No. She turned the page. More writing vanished before her eyes. Memories she had entrusted to paper disappeared. Not burned. Not erased. Forgotten. The journal slipped from her hands. She pressed trembling fingers against her temple. For a brief moment, she remembered standing beneath an enormous golden tree. Children laughed around her. A young dragon challenged her to a race. Someone called her name. Then, the memory shattered. Only the ache remained. She whispered into the empty garden. What have I lost? No answer came. Only the distant sound of wings overhead. Temple bells echoed across eternal dawn. Phoenix elders hurried through the palace gardens. Sacred flames that had burned continuously for centuries flickered uncertainly. One brazier, then another, went dark. The high flamekeeper stared in disbelief. The eternal fire. His voice trembled. Has forgotten how to burn. Feng Lian gathered the fading journal against her chest. Fear settled quietly inside her. Not fear for herself. Fear that someone was stealing more than memories. They were stealing identity. Without memory, who remained? A single ember drifted upward from the dying flame. Instead of disappearing, it floated east, toward Cloudspire, toward Long Way. Feng Lian watched until it vanished into the morning sky. She made her decision. Prepare my horse. One attendant looked confused. Your Highness, the roads beyond the kingdom are dangerous. Feng Lian closed the journal. So is staying here. She looked toward the horizon. I don't know who called, but someone remembered. And if memory is returning, I intend to find it. Far away, Long Way stood beside the nameless gardener as the golden light beneath his glove slowly faded. Neither of them noticed the tiny ember drifting silently across the heavens. It crossed mountains, forests, clouds, drawn by a force older than kingdoms. The paths of the dragon and the phoenix had begun moving toward one another. Neither yet knew. Their meeting would change the fate of the Vale itself. Chapter 8. The White Tiger's Oath. The White Tiger Kingdom did not rise into the clouds. It stood upon the earth. Its mountains pierced the heavens, their snow-covered peaks guarding narrow valleys where stone fortresses had endured for thousands of years. Strength was respected there. Honor was expected. An oath was sacred. General Bai Ren had sworn his first oath before he was old enough to lift a sword. Protect the innocent. Defend the truth. Never abandon a promise freely given. For 3 centuries he had lived by those words. He had never broken one. Until today, he feared he already had. The warning from Cloudspire reached the White Tiger's citadel before sunset. A single jade hawk descended through the mountain air and landed upon the fortress wall. Its message carried only 9 words. The eastern sky gate has opened. History is changing. Byron read the message twice. His expression remained unchanged. Inside, something ancient stirred. He dismissed his officers and climbed alone to the highest watchtower overlooking the mountains. From there he could see the endless forest stretching toward lands few white tigers had entered for generations. The wind carried a strange scent. Rain, pine, and something older. Memory. He closed his eyes. For the briefest moment, he saw children laughing beneath an enormous golden tree. One of them turned. A young dragon. Beside him stood a phoenix child holding a feather bright as fire. Nearby, a fox spirit laughed while chasing falling leaves. A voice called his own name. Then, nothing. The vision disappeared like mist before sunrise. Byron opened his eyes sharply. He remembered none of those faces. Yet losing them hurt. How could someone mourn people they had never known? A young captain approached carefully. General, Byron remained facing the horizon. Have every guardian prepare for travel. The captain hesitated. Where are we going? Byron answered quietly. To keep an oath. Which oath, General? The white tiger looked toward the eastern sky. The one I no longer remember making. That evening, inside the Hall of Oaths, hundreds of white tiger guardians gathered beneath towering stone pillars. Each warrior carried a single white ribbon tied around the wrist, a symbol that every promise bound the soul before it bound the sword. Byron drew his spear, not as a weapon, as a witness. He planted it firmly into the stone floor. I cannot tell you why. I cannot explain what has changed. But I know this. He looked into the eyes of every warrior before him. The world is forgetting something it was never meant to lose. Silence answered him. Not uncertainty. Resolve. One by one, the guardians drew their weapons and struck them lightly against the stone. The sound echoed through the hall like distant thunder. Not applause. Agreement. Far away, beneath the floating towers of Cloudspire, Long Way unknowingly tightened his gloved hand. The chronicle scale answered with another pulse of golden light. Across 3 kingdoms, a phoenix princess had begun her journey. A fox queen had reopened forgotten records. A white tiger general had renewed an oath whose beginning had vanished from history. The pieces were moving, not by chance, by memory. And somewhere beyond every kingdom, the weaver quietly smiled. The game that had slept for 3,000 years had finally begun. Chapter 9. The Name Beneath the Roots. The old gardener refused every offer of escort. Imperial guards remained at a respectful distance. General Byron insisted on assigning warriors. The old man smiled politely and declined them all. I've walked this road before. No one questioned him. No one knew how. Longway walked beside him in thoughtful silence. The questions inside his mind had begun competing with one another. Who was the gardener? What was the world tree? Why had the mirror shown a city no one remembered? And why did everyone seem to believe those answers belonged to him? Finally, he spoke. When you said you carried me beneath the world tree, were you telling the truth? The old man looked ahead. I don't tell lies. You also don't explain much. A quiet laugh escaped the gardener. That is fair. They descended from Cloudspire by an ancient stairway carved into the mountainside. Few dragons used it anymore. Most preferred to fly. The gardener preferred walking. Why? Longway finally asked. The old man rested one hand against the rough stone. Because the world speaks differently to those who walk. He smiled. You miss a great deal when you only look from above. Hours passed. The floating kingdom disappeared behind them. Dense forests replaced polished bridges. The air grew warmer. Birdsong replaced temple bells. Longwei noticed something strange. The further they traveled, the stronger the warmth beneath his chronicle scale became. Almost as if something below the earth recognized him. Near sunset, they reached an enormous tree unlike any Longwei had ever seen. Its roots spread across the mountainside like rivers of ancient stone. Each root was wider than a city street. The bark shimmered faintly beneath the fading light. The gardener stopped. "We're close." "Close to what?" The first answer. Longwei stepped toward the nearest root. Without thinking, he placed his hand upon it. Golden light exploded beneath the bark. The mountain trembled. Birds rose into the evening sky. Leaves burst from branches that moments earlier had appeared lifeless. The chronicle scale beneath his glove answered with brilliant light. Longwei stumbled backward. What was that? The gardener's eyes filled with quiet wonder. "The roots remember you." Longwei stared at the glowing tree. "I've never been here." "No. You've simply belonged here. Longer than you remember." Deep beneath the mountain, far below roots older than kingdoms, a single candle lit itself. Then another. Then hundreds. Inside an endless underground library, books began opening one by one. Pages turned without hands touching them. Ancient ink shimmered with renewed life. A woman dressed in robes woven from living roots slowly opened her eyes. She had waited beside those shelves for 3,000 years. She smiled. The keeper has begun his journey. Above, Longwei remained frozen beside the glowing root. His heartbeat refused to slow. He looked toward the old gardener. "Who is waiting for me?" The gardener's answer was almost a whisper. "Someone who never stopped believing you would come." The last light of day disappeared beyond the mountains. Night settled quietly across the forest. Far beneath their feet, the library beneath the roots was awake. Chapter 10. The One Who Walked Before Time. Night settled gently over the mountains. Moonlight filtered through towering branches, turning the ancient forest into a world of silver and shadow. Longwei and the old gardener made camp beside the enormous root that had awakened beneath his touch. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The forest didn't feel empty. It felt watchful. A small fire crackled between them. Longwei stared into the flames. "So," he finally said, "who are you?" The old gardener smiled without looking up. "I've had many names. I'll settle for one." The old man poked thoughtfully at the fire. "I planted gardens. I mended roots. I watched kingdoms rise before they learned they were kingdoms." Longwei frowned. "That isn't a name." "No, it isn't." The silence returned. Not uncomfortable. Patient. Longwei had begun realizing the gardener answered questions the way rivers flowed. Never directly. Always eventually. A shooting star crossed the sky. The gardener watched it disappear beyond the mountains. "Do you know why stars fall?" Longwei shook his head. "I've read 12 different theories. They all disagree." The gardener chuckled softly. "They fall because even heaven grows tired." Longwei looked up. "I've never read that." Some books were forgotten. The words lingered. Longwei quietly fed another branch into the fire. "You've spoken about the world tree. You knew my parents. You crossed a gate no one could open." He looked directly at the old man. "You also knew my chronicle scale wasn't broken." The gardener finally met his eyes. "Yes." Longwei leaned forward. "Then tell me the truth." The old man closed his eyes. "When I first met you, you were laughing." The answer caught Longwei completely off guard. "You couldn't have." "I did. You said you carried me." "I did. I've never seen you before." The gardener nodded. "Not in the life you remember." A breeze stirred the enormous roots surrounding them. Golden light shimmered faintly beneath the bark. The forest itself seemed to lean closer. The gardener spoke quietly. "There was a time before kingdoms. A time before dragons ruled the skies. A time before phoenixes guarded the dawn. A time when every people lived beneath one tree." Longwei listened without interrupting. "It wasn't perfect," the old man continued, "but it was whole." "What happened?" The gardener looked into the fire. "We forgot." Long Wei frowned. "That's all." The old man's expression grew heavy. "No. We chose to." The flames flickered. For a long moment. Only the sound of the forest remained. Finally Long Wei whispered, "Who would choose that?" The gardener answered with unmistakable sadness. "People trying to end their pain." Long Wei understood. Not completely, but enough. The world hadn't simply lost its memory. Someone had believed forgetting was mercy. Far beneath the earth, inside the library beneath the roots, Lasara stood beside an ancient doorway sealed by 5 enormous roots. Four glowed softly. The 5th remained dark. She rested her hand upon it. "It won't be long now." The library answered with a low, living heartbeat. Books opened throughout the endless halls. Candles brightened. Somewhere among the shelves, a child's laughter echoed briefly before fading into silence. Lasara smiled. "He's closer." Above ground, Long Wei lay awake long after the fire had become glowing embers. He stared toward the stars. Questions filled every corner of his mind. Yet beneath them all, one thought remained. If someone had chosen forgetting, could someone else choose remembering? The chronicle scale beneath his glove answered with a single pulse of warm golden light. The journey had only just begun. Chapter 11. The Garden of Empty Stars. Dawn arrived quietly. Mist drifted between ancient trees, wrapping the forest in silver light. Birds greeted the morning with hesitant songs, as though even they sensed they had entered a place where ordinary time no longer ruled. Long Wei woke before the old gardener. Or so he believed. The fire had burned itself into warm embers. The blankets remained folded. The gardener was nowhere to be seen. "Master." Only the forest answered. Long Wei rose and followed faint footprints leading deeper among the enormous roots. The further he walked, the quieter the world became. Birdsong faded. Wind disappeared. Even his own footsteps seemed swallowed by the earth. Ahead, the trees opened into a circular clearing unlike anything he had ever imagined. Thousands of white flowers covered the ground. Above them, no branches stretched overhead. Instead, the sky itself seemed impossibly close. Stars still shimmered despite the morning sun. Countless stars. Yet something felt wrong. Long Wei looked more carefully. There were spaces. Empty places where stars should have been. Dark gaps scattered across the heavens. Like missing words in an unfinished sentence. "You noticed." The gardener's voice came softly behind him. Long Wei turned. What happened to them? The old man stepped into the clearing. "This is the Garden of Empty Stars." He looked upward. Every missing star marks a memory the world has forgotten. Long Wei's eyes widened. "There are so many." The gardener nodded sadly. "Far too many." Long Wei knelt among the white flowers. Their petals shimmered faintly beneath his fingertips. "What are these?" "They bloom wherever a memory still survives." He looked across the clearing. As long as even one soul remembers, a flower remains. Long Wei gently lifted one blossom. Its fragrance reminded him of home. Not Cloudspire. Somewhere older. Somewhere he had never been. The feeling vanished almost immediately, leaving only longing behind. The gardener watched quietly. "You felt it." "I don't understand it." "You don't have to." "Not yet." They continued walking through the clearing. Near its center stood a single stone bench, weathered by centuries, perhaps millennia. The gardener rested one hand upon it. "I used to sit here." Long Wei smiled. "You've said that about almost everywhere we've been." The old man laughed. "I've lived a very long time." His smile slowly faded. "So have my regrets." Long Wei hesitated. "Were you there when the world chose forgetting?" The gardener did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward one of the empty places in the sky. Finally, he spoke. "I was there, and I failed." The words barely rose above a whisper. "I believed I could save everyone." He lowered his eyes. "In trying to save the world, we broke it." Long Wei remained silent. Some confessions deserved witnesses, not replies. Without warning, one of the empty places in the sky flickered. A single star returned. Small, faint, but unmistakably present. Longway stared upward. It came back. The gardener smiled. No, you remembered something. The chronicle scale beneath Longway's glove glowed warmly. Not brightly, steadily. Another flower opened nearby. Then another. The garden was changing, one memory at a time. Far beneath the mountains, inside the library beneath the roots, Lasara closed the book she had been reading. A gentle smile touched her face. The garden has begun blooming again. She looked toward the sealed doorway at the heart of the library. The fifth seal is weakening. Behind the ancient roots, something answered. Not with words, with a heartbeat. Slow, ancient, patient. Above, Longway looked once more at the returning star. Hope. It was only a single point of light, but against an endless sky. Sometimes one light was enough to begin finding the way home. Chapter 12, The Forgotten Road. Morning light filtered through the garden of empty stars as Longway and the old gardener resumed their journey. The path ahead was barely visible. Roots crossed it like the veins of the earth. Ancient stones emerged from moss, each carved with symbols so weathered that time itself seemed to have forgotten their meaning. Longway paused beside one. I can't read this. The gardener smiled. No one can. It belonged to the first tongue. The language spoken before kingdoms needed different words. They continued in silence. The forest had changed again. The trees stood farther apart. The air carried a quiet expectancy, as though every leaf had been waiting for someone to return. Longway noticed something else. Animals no longer fled from them. A family of deer watched calmly from the trees. White cranes landed only a few steps away. Even a fox emerged briefly before disappearing into the undergrowth without fear. They know you, Longway said. The gardener shook his head. They know the road. By midday they reached a weathered stone archway half buried beneath enormous roots. No walls remained. No gate. Only the arch. Across its worn surface, a single line of ancient writing still survived. Longway brushed away centuries of moss. To his surprise, the words slowly became clear. Not because he understood the language, but because the chronicle scale beneath his glove began glowing. The symbols changed, transforming into words he could read. Those who remember may pass. Longway stepped back. I shouldn't be able to read that. The gardener's eyes softened. No, but your chronicle remembers. Longway reached toward the arch. The instant his fingers touched the stone, the world disappeared. He stood in bright sunlight. Children raced through fields beneath an immense golden tree. Dragons laughed with phoenixes. White tiger cubs wrestled with young fox spirits. No one asked where anyone came from. No one cared. The world felt whole. A small boy ran past him. He stopped suddenly and looked directly into Longway's eyes. You're late. Longway blinked. What? We've been waiting. The child smiled brightly and ran toward the tree. Longway took a step after him. Everything shattered. The forest returned. He stumbled backward, breathing hard. What was that? The gardener steadied him. A memory. My memory? Our memory. Longway looked once more at the ancient arch. It felt real. It was, but none of it exists. The gardener rested a hand against the stone. It existed, and somewhere, it still does. Clouds gathered overhead. For the first time since leaving Cloudspire, thunder rolled across the mountains. Not from a storm, from beneath the earth. The roots around them pulsed with faint golden light. One after another, like a heartbeat traveling through the world. The gardener became very still. He knows. Longway frowned. Who? The old man looked toward the forest beyond the arch. The Weaver. The name settled over the path like an approaching shadow. Longway felt it immediately. Not fear. Recognition. As though he had heard that name long ago. and spent his entire life trying to remember it. The gardener tightened his grip on his staff. We've run out of time. Then we should hurry. The old man nodded. Yes. For the first time in 3,000 years. Someone else has begun looking for you. Chapter 13. The Watcher Between Worlds. The forest no longer welcomed them. Its silence had changed. Only hours earlier, the ancient woods had felt alive with quiet expectation. Now, they felt as though they were holding their breath. Longway noticed it first. No birds. No insects. Even the wind had disappeared. Only the steady sound of their footsteps remained. The old gardener stopped. Do not speak. Longway nodded. They listened. Nothing. And somehow, nothing was far more unsettling than any war. A single leaf drifted from the canopy. It never reached the ground. Halfway through the air, it vanished. Not burned. Not torn apart. Simply forgotten. Longway stared. Did you see that? The gardener answered without taking his eyes off the trees. I did. What caused it? The same thing that stole the world's memories. Another leaf disappeared. Then another. Soon an entire branch stood bare. Not because autumn had come, because memory itself had passed over it. The tree remained standing. Yet somehow, it no longer remembered it had once carried leaves. The gardener slowly lowered his staff. We're being watched. Longway instinctively looked around. I don't see anyone. You aren't supposed to. A voice answered from somewhere beyond the trees. You've learned quickly. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The words seemed to arrive from every direction at once. Longway turned. No one. The gardener remained perfectly still. I wondered how long it would take. The voice carried neither anger nor joy. Only patience. The shadows between the trees deepened. One shape separated itself from the darkness. A traveler emerged. Gray robes. Bare feet. No weapon. No crown. He looked ordinary. Almost forgettable. Until Longway tried looking away. The moment he did, he couldn't remember the man's face. He looked back immediately. There it was again. Clear. Distinct. The instant he blinked, it began slipping from memory. Longway's heart pounded. Who are you? The stranger smiled faintly. That depends. On what? Whether you remember this conversation tomorrow. The gardener stepped forward. Enough. The stranger inclined his head respectfully. It has been a long time. It has. You still protect him. I always will. Longway looked from one to the other. Station tomorrow. You know each other. The stranger nodded. We're old acquaintances. The gardener corrected him. Old opponents. Silence returned. The stranger's expression remained calm. I didn't come to fight. Then why are you here? His eyes settled on Longway. To see whether hope had finally found a face. The chronicle scale beneath Longway's glove flared with brilliant light. For one impossible heartbeat, the stranger's reflection appeared. Not as a traveler, but as a man standing beneath the world tree. His robes were white. His eyes carried immeasurable sorrow. In his hands rested a single thread of golden light, already beginning to unravel. The vision vanished. Longway whispered, The Weaver, heartbeat. The stranger smiled. So, you've started remembering. The forest trembled. Roots shifted beneath the earth. Far below, inside the library beneath the roots, thousands of books opened at once. Lasara closed her eyes. He has found him. The weaver looked toward the old gardener. I won't stop him. The gardener answered quietly. I know. The weaver looked back at Longway. But neither can I promise what waits at the end of this road. He turned to leave. After only a few steps, his outline dissolved into drifting leaves. Then, nothing. He was gone. Longway remained frozen. One question echoed through his thoughts. If the weaver was not the enemy, who was? The gardener resumed walking. We're almost there. Longway hurried after him. Behind them, the forgotten road slowly disappeared. Ahead, the library waited. Chapter 14. The Library Beneath the Roots. The mountain opened without a sound. Longway watched in astonishment as the colossal roots before him slowly separated, revealing a passage hidden since before the first kingdom had drawn breath. No gears turned. No stone ground against stone. The roots simply made room. The old gardener smiled. They know you're here. Longway stared into the darkness beyond. I've never been here. No. The gardener replied gently. But this place has been waiting for you. The air inside felt different. Cool. Still. Alive. Golden light flowed through the roots like rivers beneath clear ice, illuminating a winding staircase descending far below the mountain. Each step had been worn smooth by countless feet, yet no dust covered them, as though someone still walked these halls every day. Longway reached out to touch the nearest root. Warmth answered him immediately. Not heat. Recognition. The chronicle scale beneath his glove glowed in quiet reply. They descended. The deeper they traveled, the quieter the world became. Soon even their footsteps no longer echoed. Instead, Longway heard something else. Pages turning. Thousands of them. Soft. Patient. Like rain falling upon leaves. He looked toward the gardener. Do you hear that? The old man nodded. The library has begun reading again. The staircase ended before a pair of enormous wooden doors. No carvings decorated them. No locks barred the entrance. Only one sentence had been engraved across the ancient wood. Nothing truly remembered is ever lost. Longway whispered the words aloud. The door slowly opened. His breath caught. Shelves stretched farther than sight itself. Books climbed toward a ceiling hidden among living roots glowing with soft golden light. Candles floated through the air without holders or flame. Scrolls drifted gently from shelf to shelf as though guided by unseen hands. It wasn't simply a library. It was memory given form. Longway had devoted his entire life to knowledge. Nothing had prepared him for this. At the center of the endless hall stood a woman. Her robes appeared woven from living vines and golden leaves. Dark hair flowed across her shoulders like midnight water. She looked neither young nor old, only timeless. She had been waiting, not with impatience, with certainty. She smiled. Welcome home. Longway stopped walking. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. Her smile deepened. I've imagined you saying that. She stepped closer. For 3,000 years. The old gardener bowed. Not to royalty. Not to power. To an old friend. Lysara. She inclined her head. You've brought him. As promised. Longway looked from one to the other. Station tomorrow. You both keep speaking as if I've already lived this. Lysara met his eyes. You have. His heart skipped. No. I would remember. A sadness touched her expression. That is exactly why you're here. She extended her hand. Walk with me. Longway hesitated only a moment before accepting. The instant their hands touched, the library awakened. Thousands of books opened together. Candles brightened. Roots pulsed with warm light. Somewhere in the endless distance, a child laughed. Longway turned toward the sound. No one stood there. Only rows of ancient shelves disappearing into forever. Lysara watched him carefully. Did you hear him? Hear who? The child. Longway nodded slowly. I thought I imagined it. You didn't. Who is he? Lysara's smile became almost wistful. Someone who has been waiting even longer than I have. The gardener rested both hands upon his staff. The first chronicle is ready. Lysara looked toward the heart of the library. Far beyond the endless shelves, 5 immense roots rose around a circular chamber. 4 glowed brightly. The 5th remained dark. She drew one careful breath. Then, it is finally time. Longway followed her gaze. For reasons he could not explain, he felt as though his entire life had been leading toward that single unopened chamber. The answers he had searched for. The memories the world had lost. The truth about the world tree. All of it waited. Just beyond the 5th root. Chapter 15. The Hall of Forgotten Names. Lysara led them deeper into the library. The endless shelves slowly gave way to a vast circular chamber unlike any Long Wei had yet seen. There were no books here, only pillars, thousands of them, each carved from living crystal, each bearing a single name. Some glowed warmly, others had dimmed to little more than shadows. Many were blank. Long Wei slowed. What is this place? Lasara rested her fingertips against the nearest pillar. The Hall of Forgotten Names. She spoke with quiet reverence. Every soul who has ever lived leaves an echo. As long as one living heart remembers them, their name continues to shine. Long Wei looked across the chamber. So the dark pillars, she nodded, belong to those the world has forgotten. He walked slowly among them. Thousands, perhaps millions. Each represented a life, a family, a dream, and years. A promise. Some names glowed brilliantly. Others flickered weakly, as though struggling against a darkness that refused to let go. One crystal suddenly dimmed before his eyes. Its light disappeared. The name carved into its surface faded. Then, it was gone. Long Wei stared in disbelief. It happened. Just now. Lasara lowered her eyes. It happens every day. The old gardener stood silently in the center of the hall. His expression carried a sorrow so old it no longer needed words. Long Wei approached him. Can they be saved? The gardener looked around the chamber. Some. And the others? He closed his eyes. We mourn them. The answer settled heavily between them. Long Wei had spent years believing history was made of kings, wars, and kingdoms. Now he understood. History was people, ordinary lives, remembered or forgotten. A soft voice echoed through the hall. He's here. Long Wei turned. No one. Only rows of crystal stretching into the distance. He frowned. You heard that? Lasara smiled. I did. Who keeps speaking? She looked toward the glowing pillars. Someone who isn't allowed to leave. The words unsettled him. Allowed. The library protects many things. Lasara answered. Books. Memories. She paused. And promises. Without warning. One pillar blazed with golden light. Not softly. Brilliantly. The light spread through the floor beneath Long Wei's feet. One by one, nearby pillars awakened. Hundreds. Then thousands. The hall shimmered like a sky filled with stars. The old gardener smiled. They remember. Long Wei looked around in amazement. Who? The gardener met his eyes. You. Long Wei stepped backward. That doesn't make sense. I've never been here. No. Lasara said gently. But your soul has. Before Long Wei could answer, a deep vibration rolled through the library. Every candle flickered. Books opened across distant halls. The crystal pillars dimmed. Silence returned. Lasara's expression changed instantly. He knows. The gardener nodded once. The weaver? No. Lasara whispered. Someone older. The temperature dropped. Not with cold. With absence. As though something had entered the library. That did not belong to memory at all. Far beyond the hall. The fifth root trembled. A crack appeared across its ancient surface. Only the width of a thread. Yet after 3,000 years. It was enough. Lasara drew a careful breath. The seal is weakening. The old gardener looked toward Long Wei. Our time grows shorter. Long Wei stared at the fractured root. Questions still filled his mind. But one certainty had finally taken shape. He had not been brought here to learn history. He had been brought here to decide its future. Chapter 16. The Chamber Beyond the Fifth Root. The crack spread slowly across the fifth root. Not with the violence of breaking stone, but with the quiet certainty of winter ice melting beneath the first warmth of spring. No one spoke. The library itself seemed to be listening. A deep heartbeat rolled through the endless halls. Not loud. Ancient. Alive. Every candle brightened. Books opened without hands touching them. Pages turned together like thousands of voices drawing the same breath. Long Wei felt the rhythm beneath his feet. Then inside his chest. The two heartbeats became one. Lasara stepped toward the fifth root. For the first time since Long Wei had met her, uncertainty crossed her face. I've imagined this moment. For 3,000 years. The old gardener nodded. So have I. Long Wei looked between them. What happens when it opens? Neither answered immediately. Finally, the gardener spoke. We discover whether hope survived. The crack widened. Golden light escaped from within the enormous root. Not blinding. Gentle. Like sunrise remembered after a long winter. The light touched the floor. Ancient symbols awakened beneath their feet. Circles. Branches. Threads woven together into a pattern older than language. Long Wei stared. I've seen this before. Lasara looked at him. Where? He searched his memory. The mirror. The world tree. The arch. The garden of empty stars. She smiled softly. They've all been guiding you here. The fifth root gave a long, quiet sigh. Then, it opened. Not outward. Inward. The wood folded away like living branches welcoming a child home. Beyond it lay a circular chamber bathed in warm golden light. Unlike the rest of the library, there were no shelves, no scrolls, no candles. Only one pedestal stood at its center. Upon it rested a single book. Its cover was plain, white, untouched by time. No title, no decoration. Only one golden thread wrapped gently around its spine. Long Wei stepped forward without realizing he had moved. His chronicle scale glowed brighter with every step. The warmth beneath his glove became impossible to ignore. Lasara whispered, The first chronicle. Long Wei stopped before the pedestal. This is the book everyone's been protecting? The gardener shook his head. No, we've been protecting the one destined to open it. Long Wei slowly reached toward the cover. His fingers hovered only inches away. The chronicle scale pulsed once, twice. Then, the golden thread unwound by itself. The book opened. Its pages were blank. Every one of them. Long Wei frowned. There's nothing here. Lasara answered quietly. There wasn't. Until you arrived. A single drop of golden light fell from the chronicle scale onto the first page. Words appeared immediately. Not written. Remembered. When the keeper returns. The writing paused. Another line formed. The world may choose again. Silence filled the chamber. Long Wei barely breathed. What does that mean? The gardener's eyes carried both hope and sorrow. It means history is giving us a second chance. Before anyone could speak again, the chamber darkened. The golden light withdrew into the pages. Every candle throughout the library flickered violently. Some went out. Others burned blue. A low voice echoed through the chamber. Not from the doorway. Not from the walls. From the book itself. He has found the chronicle. A second voice answered. Then the last prison will soon awaken. The light vanished. The first chronicle closed on its own. Long Wei looked toward Lasara. What was that? She lowered her eyes. The beginning of the part of history we prayed would never return. Far beyond the library, beneath mountains older than memory, something wrapped in ancient chains opened one eye. For the first time in 3,000 years. It smiled. Chapter 17, The Choice of the Weaver. The first chronicle closed. Its white cover became still once more. No one moved. Long Wei kept his hand suspended above the book, uncertain whether he had truly opened it or merely witnessed a memory awakening. The silence that followed felt sacred and afraid. The old gardener stepped forward. You've seen enough. Long Wei looked up. No, I've only just begun. The gardener smiled sadly. I was hoping you would say that. Lasara gently lifted the first chronicle from its pedestal. Though the book appeared ordinary, she carried it as one would carry a sleeping child. It belonged to memory, and memory was fragile. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. Once, then again. Neither Long Wei nor Lasara had moved. The sound came from the doorway. The weaver stood there. He had entered without disturbing a single candle, without opening a single door. without leaving a footprint upon the ancient floor. His expression was calm, almost relieved. You found it. His voice held no triumph, only certainty. Longway stepped between the Weaver and the Chronicle. I won't let you take it. The Weaver smiled. If I wanted the Chronicle, I would have taken it 3,000 years ago. Longway frowned. Then why are you here? The Weaver looked toward the old gardener. To finish a conversation that history interrupted. The gardener lowered his eyes. I've replayed that conversation every day since. So have I. Lasara remained silent. She knew this moment belonged to two old friends. Or perhaps two old enemies. Longway realized something. Neither man feared the other. What stood between them was not hatred. It was grief. The Weaver walked slowly toward the center of the chamber. When the world tree began dying, everyone searched for a cure. He looked at Longway. I searched for a sacrifice. The words settled like stone. The old gardener continued the story. I searched for hope. The Weaver nodded. We both failed. Longway looked between them. What happened? The Weaver answered first. We stood beneath the world tree. It was losing every memory it carried. The kingdoms would have destroyed one another, trying to preserve what remained. So I made a choice. His voice became almost a whisper. I severed the threads connecting every nation. Longway's eyes widened. You erased the world. No. The Weaver replied quietly. I divided it. The gardener spoke. You saved countless lives. The Weaver closed his eyes and condemned generations to loneliness. Silence filled the chamber. No one argued. No one judged. History was rarely simple. The Weaver looked toward Longway. I've carried that burden for 3,000 years. I've waited for someone capable of making a better choice. His gaze settled on the glowing Chronicle scale. I was hoping it would be you. Longway struggled to find words. You expect me to decide the future of every kingdom? The Weaver shook his head. No. I expect you to decide whether remembering is worth the pain it brings. The question lingered. Longway thought of Cloudspire, of the Hall, of Fonlien, of Yulian, of Byren, of the forgotten names, of the empty stars. He finally answered. Pain isn't the enemy. The Weaver watched him carefully. Forgetting is. For the first time in 3,000 years. The Weaver smiled without sadness. The Chronicle chose well. The library trembled. A violent pulse shook every root. Candles burst into brilliant golden flame. Books flew open throughout the endless halls. Lasara looked toward the ceiling. The prison. Her voice caught. It's waking. Far beneath the library. Ancient chains groaned. The sound rolled upward through stone older than kingdoms. Something imprisoned since before memory had heard Longway's answer, and it was listening. Chapter 18. The Child Who Remembered Everything. The trembling stopped, not because the danger had passed, because something had awakened. The library fell into complete silence. Every floating candle became perfectly still. Every page ceased turning. Even the roots themselves seemed to wait. Longway looked toward the sealed chamber. What happened? Lasara answered in little more than a whisper. He knows you're here. Who? She hesitated, then smiled sadly. The child. The old gardener nodded. It's time. Without warning. A small laugh echoed through the library. Not frightening. Not haunting. Joyful. The kind of laughter that belonged to a child discovering something wonderful. Longway turned toward the sound. Again. No one. Only endless shelves stretching beyond sight. Then, tiny footprints appeared across the stone floor. One after another. Golden. As though invisible feet walked through pools of morning sunlight. The footprints stopped a few paces before Longway. Silence. Then, a small voice. You took long enough. A boy stepped into view. He looked no older than 8. Dark hair. Simple white robes. Bare feet. Nothing about him suggested greatness. Yet the library itself leaned toward him. The candles burned brighter. The books opened wider. Even the roots seemed to bow. The child looked at Long Wei with complete familiarity. I've missed you. Long Wei blinked. I don't think we've met. The boy tilted his head. Not recently. The old gardener lowered himself onto one knee. Not out of duty. Out of affection. It's good to see you again. The child smiled warmly. You kept your promise. I tried. You did more than try. Long Wei looked toward Lasara. Who is he? She answered softly. The first keeper. Long Wei frowned. But he's a child. Lasara nodded. He always has been. The boy walked past Long Wei and gently placed one hand upon the first chronicle. The blank pages filled instantly with flowing golden script. Thousands of lines appeared. Histories, songs, names, memories. Long Wei stared in amazement. How are you doing that? The child smiled. I'm not writing. I'm remembering. The words settled heavily inside the chamber. Long Wei realized something astonishing. The first chronicle had never been empty. It had simply been waiting for someone who still remembered how to read it. The child looked directly into Long Wei's eyes. My name, he paused, is Ion. The moment he spoke it, every candle in the library flared brilliantly. Across every kingdom beneath heaven, people stopped where they stood. Some cried without knowing why. Others suddenly remembered songs they had not sung since childhood. Old friends recalled faces they thought were gone forever. A mother remembered the lullaby her grandmother once sang. A soldier remembered the brother whose name had slipped away years before. The world remembered, if only for a moment. Ion smiled. See, it still works. Then, his expression changed. He looked beyond the library, toward something far older, far darker. They heard me. The warmth inside the library faded. The roots groaned. The old gardener rose immediately. So soon. The weaver closed his eyes. I was afraid of this. Long Wei stepped forward. Afraid of what? Ion looked at him. Not with fear. With compassion. They know. The first name has been spoken. Deep beneath the roots. Beyond the oldest foundations of the world. Another chain broke. Its echo rolled through the darkness. Something ancient drew its first full breath in 3,000 years. And somewhere beyond memory itself, an old war began again. Chapter 19. The Prison Beneath the World. The sound of the breaking chain did not fade. It lingered, not in the air, but in memory itself. Long Wei felt it pass through him like a forgotten dream returning after centuries. Every candle in the library flickered. Some went dark. Others burned with deep blue flames. The roots trembled. Far above, the mountains answered with a low, mournful groan. Ion's smile disappeared. His eyes no longer belonged to a child. For a fleeting instant, they held the weight of every age the world had forgotten. It has awakened. Long Wei stepped closer. What has? Ion looked toward the darkness beneath the library. The prison. Lasara drew a slow breath. There were never 5 seals. Long Wei looked at her. There were 6. Silence followed. The old gardener lowered his head. We never wanted anyone to remember the 6th. Long Wei's heart pounded. Why? The weaver answered. Because the 6th seal was never meant to imprison a place. He looked toward the earth beneath them. It imprisoned a choice. The words settled heavily inside the chamber. Long Wei frowned. I don't understand. You will. The weaver replied quietly. And when you do, I pray you're stronger than we were. The library shook again. This time, books crashed from distant shelves. Ancient ladders toppled. Dust filled the glowing halls. Somewhere beyond the endless stacks, a bell rang. Once, then twice, then stopped. Ion closed his eyes. They're coming. Who? Long Wei asked. The child answered without opening his eyes. The remembered. The temperature dropped. Golden light retreated into the roots. Darkness gathered at the far end of the chamber. Shapes slowly emerged. Not monsters. People. Dozens of them. Transparent. Silent. Dragons. Phoenixes. Fox spirits. White tigers. They walked together through the library without disturbing a single page. Each carried a faint golden thread that disappeared into the darkness below. Longway whispered, "Ghosts." The gardener shook his head. "No. Memories." One elderly woman stopped before Longway. She smiled kindly, although he had never seen her before. His eyes filled with tears. She raised a trembling hand. Not to touch him, to bless him. Then she vanished into drifting light. Another figure appeared. A young white tiger warrior. Then a fox child. Then a phoenix elder. Hundreds. Passing quietly through the library. Returning to a place beyond sight. Lasara watched them with reverence. The remembered return whenever history changes. They're witnessing this moment. Longway asked softly, "Why?" The weaver answered, "Because they know. Everything depends on what happens next." Far below, the final chain cracked. Not completely, only enough to let a single pulse of darkness escape. It traveled upward through ancient stone like ink spreading across water. The roots dimmed. The candles bowed. Even the first chronicle closed itself. Ion looked directly at Longway. "They've found the door." Longway swallowed. "Can we stop them?" Ion's answer came with heartbreaking honesty. "No." A long silence followed. "But," the child smiled again, "we can choose who reaches it first." The old gardener lifted his staff. The weaver stepped beside him. Lasara held the first chronicle against her heart. For the first time in 3,000 years, the guardians of memory stood together again. Not to remember the past, but to protect the future. Longway looked toward the darkness beyond the roots. He no longer felt like the scholar who had overslept that morning in Cloudspire. Something had changed. Not around him. Within him. The journey to the library had ended. The journey of the Keeper had begun. Chapter 20. The Keeper's Choice. The darkness stopped at the threshold. It did not rush forward. It did not roar. It waited, patiently, as though it understood that some victories could not be taken, only given. Longway stood before the first chronicle. Behind him, Lasara held the ancient book. The old gardener rested both hands upon his staff. The weaver watched in silence. Ion stood nearest the darkness. Small, calm, unafraid. Longway finally spoke. "What is it waiting for?" The weaver answered first. "You." Longway frowned. "It doesn't know me." The old gardener looked at him kindly. "It knows what you carry." Longway slowly removed the glove from his left hand. The chronicle scale shone brighter than ever before. For the first time since his birth, its silver surface was no longer empty. Tiny golden threads moved beneath it like flowing rivers. Alive. Remembering. Ion smiled. "The chronicle has accepted you." Longway looked down. "I haven't done anything." "You remembered." The child answered. "Sometimes. That is the hardest thing anyone can do." The darkness stirred. Not angrily. Hungrily. It pressed gently against the invisible barrier surrounding the library. The roots groaned beneath the strain. Golden light spread through them like blood through living veins. Longway could feel the struggle. The library was protecting him. He stepped forward. The old gardener reached for him. "No." Longway looked back. "If it's waiting for me, then hiding won't save anyone." The weaver smiled. Not proudly. Hopefully. "It seems history has finally changed." Longway stopped only a few steps from the barrier. Beyond it, he could see nothing clearly. Only movement. Shadows within shadows. Something vast. Something patient. Something that had waited longer than kingdoms. A voice reached him. Not through his ears. Through memory. "Open the chronicle." Longway tightened his hand. "No." "Then remember us." He frowned. "Who are you?" Silence. Then, "Those who were forgotten first." The words pierced his heart. Not because he understood them, because somewhere deep inside, he almost did. The first chronicle opened by itself. Its pages turned rapidly. Thousands of names flowed across the parchment. Dragons, phoenixes, fox spirits, white tigers, Children, teachers, gardeners, kings, ordinary people, lives the world had lost. None demanded to return. They asked only to be remembered. Longway closed his eyes. He understood at last. The Chronicle had never been a weapon. It was a promise. No life would disappear completely. While someone still remembered, he placed his hand upon the open page. I remember. The words left his lips almost instinctively. Golden light exploded through the library. The roots blazed like sunrise. Every candle burst into brilliant flame. Across the kingdoms, people stopped where they stood. Forgotten faces returned. Old songs found their melodies. Ancient promises awakened. The world drew one long breath. And remembered. Beyond the barrier, the darkness retreated. Not defeated. Watching. Waiting. Its time had not yet come. The weaver looked toward Longway. His voice carried a peace absent for 3,000 years. You chose differently. The old gardener smiled. So the world may. Ion looked upward. The first chronicle has begun writing again. Longway followed his gaze. Words continued appearing across the glowing pages. Not about the past. About the future. The next chapter had already begun. Chapter 21. The World Remembers. Golden light spread outward from the first chronicle. Not in a violent wave. Not as an explosion. It flowed like dawn crossing a sleeping world. Quietly. Patiently. Irresistibly. High above the mountains. Cloudspire paused. Scholars stopped writing. Children looked toward the morning sky. Temple bells began ringing without a single hand touching them. Master Jian, standing alone inside the hall of 10,000 chronicles, suddenly remembered a lesson his own teacher had spoken centuries earlier. He smiled through unexpected tears. I thought I had lost your voice. In the kingdom of eternal dawn, Princess Feng Lian opened her weathered journal once more. The faded pages filled with ink. Not all at once. One sentence. Then another. Then another. She laughed softly as words she believed lost forever returned to her. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Welcome back, she whispered. Within Moonshadow Court, Queen Yulian stood inside the Vault of Echoes. One by one, crystal pillars reignited. Names long surrendered to darkness shimmered once more. Not every name, but enough. Enough to remind her that forgetting was no longer inevitable. She placed one hand against the nearest crystal. You came home. Far to the north. General Byron stood upon the walls of the White Tiger Citadel. A memory surfaced. Not of battle. Not of victory. A simple afternoon beneath a great golden tree. A dragon child had challenged him to climb higher than anyone else. A phoenix had laughed when they both fell into a river. For the first time in 3,000 years. He remembered why peace had once been possible. He smiled, then quietly renewed an oath whose beginning had finally returned. Across the world, small miracles unfolded. An old musician remembered a melody unfinished since childhood. A grandmother recalled the face of her sister. A young fox spirit completed a story interrupted generations before. Two brothers, separated by years of silence, embraced without understanding why. The world had not been restored, but it had begun healing. Deep beneath the mountains, the library breathed easier. The roots no longer strained. The candles burned with steady golden light. Books settled upon their shelves. The long silence that had haunted the halls for millennia had finally begun to lift. Lasara closed the first chronicle with gentle hands. It has started. The old gardener nodded. Yes, but it will take generations. The weaver stood quietly apart. Longway approached him. You could have opened the chronicle yourself. The weaver smiled faintly. No, it was never meant to answer me. Why? Because I stopped believing people could choose hope. He looked toward Longway. You reminded the world that they still can. Ion wandered slowly through the library, running his fingers across shelves older than kingdoms. He stopped before one empty space. A new book appeared. Its cover was white, its pages unwritten. Golden letters slowly formed across the front. The Chronicle of Long Way. Ion smiled. The next story belongs to you. Long Way looked at the blank book. Only one page contained writing. It read, "The Keeper remembered. Now the world must decide what it will become." Long Way drew a slow breath. His journey to find answers had ended. A far greater journey had just begun. Far below the library, beyond the deepest roots, beyond the oldest prison, one ancient eye slowly opened. It did not burn with hatred. It burned with recognition. A low voice echoed through the endless darkness. "So, the Keeper has returned." The chains held, for now, but they no longer felt unbreakable. Chapter 22. The First Thread. Dawn returned to the library, not because the sun had reached it. No sunlight had ever touched these halls. The light came from somewhere deeper, from memory itself. The roots glowed with a warm golden radiance, flowing through the endless chambers like the quiet return of spring after a winter that had lasted 3,000 years. The library was alive again. Long Way stood alone before the newly formed chronicle bearing his name. He did not open it. Not yet. For the first time since leaving Cloudspire, he understood that some stories should begin with patience rather than certainty. Behind him, footsteps approached. The old gardener joined him. "So," Long Way smiled. "What happens now?" The gardener looked around the endless library. "Now, you learn." Long Way laughed softly. "I thought this journey was over." "It is," the gardener answered. "And another has begun." Across the library, Lysara carefully returned the first chronicle to its resting place. The book no longer looked lonely. Nearby, Long Way's chronicle waited. Blank. Patient. Ready. She smiled. For 3,000 years, there was only one chronicle. She looked toward Long Way. Now there are two. The weaver stood beneath the highest roots. For a long time, no one spoke to him. He had carried guilt longer than most civilizations had existed. Finally, Long Way crossed the room. "I don't hate you." The weaver looked surprised. "I know. I don't understand all your choices." "You shouldn't," the weaver replied. "I barely understand them myself." Long Way offered his hand. After a long hesitation, the weaver accepted it. No forgiveness was spoken. None was needed. Some wounds healed through understanding. Long before words arrived, Ion watched from the shelves, smiling quietly. "This," he whispered to himself, "is how it was always meant to begin." One by one, the guardians gathered. Lysara, the old gardener, the weaver, Ion, and Long Way, not as rulers, not as heroes, as keepers. 5 souls standing beneath the roots of the world tree, preparing for a future none of them could fully see. The first chronicle opened by itself. Its pages turned gently. One final sentence appeared. "The veil does not separate worlds. It protects the bridge between them." The words glowed briefly, then settled into ink. Permanent. Remembered. Far above, Cloudspire awakened to an ordinary morning. Merchants reopened their stalls. Children hurried toward their lessons. Temple bells welcomed another day. Most dragons believed nothing extraordinary had happened. History often changed quietly. Princess Feng Lian looked east from the balcony of Eternal Dawn. Without knowing why, she smiled. Queen Yu Lian walked beneath flowering trees, humming a melody she had not remembered since childhood. General Byron tightened the white ribbon around his wrist and began leading his guardians toward the eastern mountains. The journey had begun for all of them. They simply did not know it yet. Deep beneath the world, inside the prison older than memory, the ancient being opened both eyes. The chain still held. The seals still endured. But something had changed. For the first time in 3,000 years, hope had returned. The ancient voice echoed softly through the darkness. "So, the game begins again." The silence answered. Patient. Endless. Waiting. Inside the library, Long Way placed one hand upon his own chronicle. The silver scale upon his wrist answered with warm golden light. He no longer feared the silence it had carried since birth. He understood it now. It had never been empty. It had been waiting for the moment the world was ready to remember. Long Wei looked toward the endless shelves stretching beyond sight. So many stories. He whispered. The old gardener smiled. And now, you get to help write the next one. The library's candles burned brighter. The roots shimmered. Somewhere beyond memory, the world tree stirred. Its first new leaf in 3,000 years unfolded toward the light. And beneath heaven, the first thread was woven once more.